Emergency room nurse Ava Reitz was halfway through the intensive care unit doors when Director Marcus Voss stopped her in front of everyone and said, "You are not special because you run fast in a hallway." The wounded Navy SEAL on the bed behind her was barely conscious, surrounded by alarms, uniforms, and frozen nurses who did not know whether to help or look away. Ava kept one hand on the rail and one hand near the oxygen line, her voice calm as she warned them the patient was reacting to the wrong medication. Voss laughed loud enough for the corridor to hear. "This is an intensive care unit, not your emergency room circus. Step back before you embarrass this hospital." Then the SEAL opened his eyes, stared straight at Ava, and whispered two words no civilian director was supposed to know. "Before this story unfolds, tell us in the comments what country you are watching from. If you believe quiet people can carry the heaviest battles without asking for applause, subscribe to Base Hospital Reckoning, where hidden truth rises when public shame goes too far." Avery did not move when Director Marcus Voss insulted her. That was what everyone remembered later. Not the alarms, not the tense line of orderlies trapped along the wall with an empty transport stretcher, not the way the automatic doors kept opening and closing behind her, letting the hard light from the emergency corridor spill into the colder blue glow of the intensive care unit. What they remembered was that Ava stood still, pale blonde hair pulled into a loose knot, young face steady beneath the fluorescent glare. One hand lightly pressed against the bedrail, as if the entire room might tilt without her. The patient on the bed was Lieutenant Commander Eli Ward, a Navy SEAL brought in from a training accident off the coast. He was alive, stable enough to move, but not safe. Ava had ridden the elevator up from the emergency department because she had seen something in his chart that did not match his breathing. His pulse had climbed too fast. His skin had gone gray around the mouth. His fingers had tightened once around the sheet in a way most people might have missed. Ava had not missed it. She had followed the transport team into the intensive care unit and said, "Stop the second dose. Do not push it yet." That was when Director Voss appeared. He was tall, broad-shouldered, polished in a dark suit that looked out of place among scrubs and gloves. On a military base hospital, everyone wore rank or responsibility like armor. Voss wore authority like a weapon. He was the civilian director who spoke at ceremonies, signed disciplinary notices, shook hands with generals, and reminded junior staff that one mistake could end a career. He glanced at Ava's badge. "Emergency room nurse," he said, as if the words were dirty. Captain Helen Klein, the intensive care unit charge nurse, stepped forward from the medication station. "Director," she came up with the transport team. The patient destabilized in the elevator. He destabilized because this transfer was rushed, Voss snapped. "And now an emergency room nurse thinks she can take command in my intensive care unit." Ava kept her eyes on Eli Ward. His eyelids fluttered. His breathing was shallow. A monitor gave a shocked, impatient tone. "His pressure is narrowing." Ava said, "The medication is wrong for him right now, Doctor." Noah Mercer, the trauma surgeon assigned to Ward, looked down at the order sheet, then at the infusion pump. He was exhausted, his mask hanging beneath his chin. "The dose is standard, not for what he is showing," Ava said. Voss laughed once. The sound carried through the open doorway and into the emergency corridor, where medics, military police, and two junior nurses had gathered without meaning to. Public humiliation always created witnesses before truth had a chance to defend itself. "You hear that?" Voss said, turning slightly so the corridor could hear him. She sees one patient from the emergency room and suddenly knows more than the surgeon, the intensive care team, and the hospital director. Ava, jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. "I know what I am seeing." "No," Voss said. "You know how to panic loudly." A young nurse near the supply cart looked down. Captain Klein's expression hardened. Director, that is not necessary. Voss said, this hospital has a chain of command. I will not allow a floor nurse from emergency intake to make a spectacle in front of military personnel. Aviva finally looked at him. There was no anger in her face. That almost made it worse. Her blue eyes held something older than anger, something buried in discipline, like a locked room with the lights still on inside. Sir, she said, if you give that second dose, he might crash. Voss stepped closer. The patient between them breathed unevenly. Do not threaten me with theater, Voss said. You are 20-something years old. You have no intensive care authority. You have no command privilege. You are here because someone let you follow a bed upstairs. Step away from Lieutenant Commander Ward before I have security remove you. The name made Eli Ward's fingers twitch. Ava felt it under her hand. Not a random movement. A pattern. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Her breath caught so slightly that only Klein noticed. The taps came again, weaker this time. 3. Pause. 2. Ave looked down at Eli's hand. His knuckles were bruised from transport straps, but his thumb was moving with intent. He was not fully conscious, but some part of him was trying to reach through the file. Dr. Mercer frowned. What is he doing? Nothing, Voss said. He is sedated, but Ava knew that rhythm. She had heard it once against the inside wall of a flooded transport vehicle. Years before she ever wore civilian scrubs, she had heard it in darkness, under pressure, when men who never begged had used tiny sounds to tell each other they were still alive. 3. Pause. True. Not a code most hospital staff would know. Not even a code most military administrators would know. Ava's hand tightened around the rail. Eli's eyes opened a fraction. They were unfocused at first, then moved across the ceiling, past Dr. Mercer, past Captain Klein, past the director, who thought he owned the room. They landed on Ava. His lips moved. No sound came out. Voss saw the movement and smirked. He is trying to speak to his actual doctor, Nurse Reed. Let the professionals work. Ava leaned down slightly. Commander Ward, do not try to talk. His fingers dug weakly into her wrist. His lips moved again. This time, the word came like air escaping from a sealed room. Raven. The monitor beeped. Captain Klein's eyes lifted. Dr. Mercer froze, with the medication syringe still in his gloved hand. Director Voss looked irritated, not afraid. What did he say? Ava's face had gone still. Eli forced one more sound through the haze, so faint that the room seemed to bend toward him to hear it. 6. The words did not make sense to most of them, not yet. But Captain Klein had served 21 years in Navy medicine before running this intensive care unit. She did not know the file. She did not know Ava's past, but she knew what a call sign sounded like when a wounded operator used it instead of a name. And she knew that men like Lieutenant Commander Eli Ward did not use call signs by accident. Voss pointed toward the door. Enough. Remove her. Ava did not look away from the patient. Eli Ward's fingers were still locked around her wrists, and beneath his tomb, he tapped the code again. 3. Pause. Too softly to hear. I know. Then the room changed. The first person to obey Ava was not the director. It was Captain Helen Klein. She stepped between Dr. Mercer and the infusion pump, one hand raised. Hold the second dose. Director Voss turned on her. Captain Klein, hold it, Klein repeated, her voice calm but sharpened by rank. Until we reassess. Dr. Mercer hesitated. His eyes moved from the syringe to Eli Ward's face, then to Ava. Ava, what are you seeing? Voss scoffed. Do not ask her that. I am asking the nurse who noticed the change first, Mercer said. That was the first crack in the room. It was small, but Everyone felt it. Ava did not smile. She did not take victory from it. She leaned closer to Eli, checking his breathing, his pupils, the line in his arm, the timing of the monitor. His airway is protected for now, but his body is reacting like the medication is compounding something already in his system. His heart rate changed before the second transfer note was signed. He was trying to communicate before sedation deepened. Dr. Mercer looked at the chart. There is nothing listed that would explain that. There is something missing, Ava said. Voss folded his arms. There is always something missing when a nurse wants attention. The corridor went quiet. Ava heard it. Everyone heard it. The cruelty was not loud anymore. It had become sharper because the patient was lying between them, because the emergency was real, and because Ava still did not give Voss the reaction he wanted. She had learned that skill in places without hallways, without directors, without witnesses kind enough to look ashamed. She had learned to keep her breathing even while men shouted over radios, while lights failed, while the person beside her begged her not to let him sleep. But she had not learned how to stop guilt from moving under her skin. Eli Ward had been on the last mission where anyone called her Raven 6. The call sign did not belong in this hospital. It belonged to a night sealed in a classified report, to a team that came home missing one voice, to a decision AVA still carried like a stone under her ribs. She had left that world because the name hurt too much to hear. She had become Nurse Reed, emergency room staff, quiet, blonde-faced under a disposable mask, fast hand, no stories. And now Eli had dragged the name into the light with one broken whisper. Captain Klein opened the medication record again. Commander Ward came with restricted transfer documentation. Half of this is redacted because he is a special operations patient, Voss said. That does not mean every emergency room nurse gets to invent secrets. AVA looked at the portable monitor. Was he given a field stabilizer before arrival? Dr. Mercer's brow tightened. That would be in the pre-transfer note? Not if it was administered under operational protocol. Voss laughed under his breath. Operational protocol. Listen to her. Klein did not laugh. She looked at Ava differently now. Not with full trust, not yet, but with the careful attention one gives to a locked cabinet after hearing something move inside it. How would you know that? Klein asked. Ava's throat tightened. That was the question she had spent years avoiding. I have seen a similar reaction, she said. Where? Voss demanded. Ava did not answer. That silence gave Voss exactly what he wanted. He turned toward the witnesses gathered beyond the doors. You see? This is what happens when dramatic staff confuse instinct with authority. She cannot explain herself because there is no explanation. Eli's monitor spiked again. Mercer moved closer. I see it. Position him to the left, Avi said. Raise the head slightly. Do not add the second dose. Start fluids slowly. Get a fresh metabolic panel and call pharmacy for everything administered before base arrival. Dr. Mercer began to move. Voss snapped. Dr. Mercer, you will not take orders from her. Mercer stopped. The room held its breath. Ava looked at him, not with command but with warning. Noah, she said quietly. Look at him. The use of his first name seemed to break something loose. Mercer turned back to the patient. Eli's hands had begun to tremble. His jaw had tightened. The monitor tones were faster now. Mercer exhaled, left position slowly. Klein, call pharmacy. Captain Klein nodded and moved. Voss's face reddened. I will remember this, Ava answered without looking at him. Remember the patient first? A junior nurse gasped softly. Voss stared as if Ava had struck him. She had not raised her voice. She had not insulted him. But in a room where everyone had been trained to fear his displeasure, That single sentence sounded like rebellion. The team moved quickly. Within 2 minutes, Alice's breathing eased. Within 4, the monitor tone steadied. Within 7, the color began returning to his face. No miracle, no dramatic cure. Just the quiet correction of a mistake before it became irreversible. Dr. Mercer looked at the numbers, then at AVA. He did not speak, but his expression changed from doubt to something closer to shame. Captain Klein returned from the secure terminal with a printed page folded in half. Pharmacy says there is a restricted field entry attached to the transport file, but our floor access cannot open it. Voss reached for the paper. Give it to me. Klein held it back. It requires command medical authorization. I am the director of this hospital. E3 requires command medical authorization. Klein repeated. Voss's nostrils flared. Avave. On Eli's wrist, his pulse was stronger now. His thumb moved again, no longer tapping the old distress rhythm. This time, he was trying to grip her hand like an anchor. His eyes opened halfway. For a moment, there was no director, no hospital, no corridor full of witnesses. There was only a man fighting through medication and memory, staring at a face he had not expected to see alive and close enough to touch. You left? He whispered. Eva? He whispered. Alva. So did Klein. Voss heard it too, and seized on it. There, he said. Personal connection. Undisclosed. That is why she forced herself into this room. Ava closed her eyes for 1 second. Alice's voice scraped out again. Not left. His gaze locked on Voss with startling effort. Saved. The word landed harder than shouting. Ava shook her head slightly. Commander, stop talking. But Eli was looking at the director now, and something inside him, trained beyond injury and sedation, pushed one more sentence into the room. Raven 6 saved us. Captain Klein went still. Doctor. Mercer's eyes widened. The junior nurse at the supply cart covered her mouth. Director Voss looked from Eli to Ava, and for the first time since entering the intensive care unit, his certainty flickered, only for a second. Then pride returned. He pointed at Ava. Security. Now. But nobody moved, because the name had been spoken twice. And this time, everyone understood it was not confusion. Security arrived in less than 3 minutes. 2 military police officers stopped just outside the intensive care unit doors, hands near their belts, eyes sticking in the patient, the director, the surgeon, the charge nurse, and Avery standing beside the bed like the calm center of a storm she had never wanted to enter. Director Voss strode toward them. Remove Nurse Red from this unit pending investigation. The taller officer glanced at Captain Klein. Captain, Voss's mouth tightened. I gave an order. Captain Klein did not step aside. The patient is stable, because Nurse Red identified a contraindication we missed. That is your interpretation, Voss said. My interpretation is that she interfered with care, concealed a personal relationship with a classified patient, and possibly triggered psychological distress by inserting herself where she did not belong. AVA finally lifted her head. The words did not wound her the way Voss intended. She had been called worse in rooms with less light. But the phrase where she did not belong found an old bruise. She had spent years not belonging anywhere. Too young for the men who thought combat medicine belonged only to hardened faces and gravel voices. Too quiet for the emergency staff who mistook silence for weakness. Too decorated for civilian peace and too guilty to stand among veterans without hearing the name of the one man she had not brought back breathing on his own. Raven 6. The name had once meant someone came when the radio failed. Now it felt like a door opening behind her. Director Dr. Mercer said carefully, we should focus on the restricted medication entry. We will focus on staff misconduct, Voss said. That is the immediate threat to this hospital. Eli Ward stirred on the bed. His voice was barely a rasp. Threat is not her. Ava leaned closer. Commander Ward, save your strength. His eyes moved to her. There was pain in them, yes, but also anger. Not at the injury. Not at the hospital. At the way they were speaking to her. Captain Klein lowered her voice. Ava, I need you to tell me one thing. Did you serve with him? The room listened. Ava's fingers tightened once around the rail. There were easy lies she could have told. She had lived on them for years. Not lies that hurt anyone. Lies of omission. Lies that kept doors closed. Lies like I worked contract emergency response. Lies like I knew some military cases. Lies like I do not remember that name. But Eli Ward was watching her, and Director Voss was waiting for her silence to become a weapon. I served near him, Ava said. Voss barked a laugh. Near him, Ava kept her eyes on Klein. Attached medical support. Special operations, classified tasking. The words moved through the room like cold water. Dr. Mercer whispered, You were military. Not in the way you are thinking, Alva said. Voss seized on that, because she is exaggerating. Classified tasking is the oldest refuge of people who cannot prove their claims. Captain Klein turned to AVA. What was your unit? Ava hesitated. The answer was still sealed, even now, especially now. Eli had been brought in under restricted documentation. If she said too much in an open unit, she could expose operations names, methods, and the protected dead. She had promised years ago that she would not trade someone else's safety for her own reputation, even if the price was being humiliated again. I cannot say that in this room, Ava answered. Voss smiled. Convenient. Ava looked at him then. No. Costly. That silenced him for half a breath. Captain Klein turned to the military police. No one removes her while Commander Ward remains unstable and while we have unresolved medication documentation. Voss stepped closer to Klein. Captain, do not make me involve command. Klein's eyes sharpened. Please do. The corridor reacted with a low ripple. Director Voss heard it, and his pride turned brittle. He pulled out his phone. But before he could place the call, the secure terminal near the nurse's station chimed. Not the usual patient alert, a restricted access tone. Captain Klein turned. The screen showed an incoming verification request from Naval Medical Command. Dr. Mercer read the header aloud. Priority authentication. Voss froze. Ava's face changed. Only a little, but enough for Klein to see fear beneath the control. Not fear of being exposed, fear of what exposure would cost. Klein crossed to the terminal. It is asking for the attending command authority. Voss recovered quickly. That would be me. He stepped to the keyboard. Ava said, Director, do not open that on the unit display. He looked back with contempt. You do not give me instructions. If that file is what I think it is, it should be opened in a secure office. Voss smiled coldly. Because it will prove you are lying. Ava did not answer. That should have warned him. He entered his credentials. The terminal rejected them. A red line appeared across the screen. Access denied. Captain Klein entered her credentials next. The system processed longer, then rejected hers too. Restricted compartment. Dr. Mercer looked at Avia. Can you open it? Voss laughed again, but this time the sound had strain in it. An emergency room nurse cannot open what hospital command cannot. Ava stared at the screen. The prompt blinked. Secondary recognition available. Enter call sign. The room seemed to pull back from itself. Captain Klein read it silently. Dr. Mercer's face went pale. Voss did not speak. Ava felt Eli Ward's hand move at her side. His fingers found her wrist with the last of his strength. 3 taps. Pause. 2. The old rhythm. The room waited. Ava did not move toward the terminal. Voss turned slowly. What is this? Ava's voice was quiet. A mistake. No, he said. It is asking for a call sign. She swallowed. That does not mean it is asking for me, but no one believed that. Not Captain Klein. Not Dr. Mercer. Not the military police at the door. Not the junior nurses standing frozen behind a supply cart. Not even Director Voss, whose face had become too still. The terminal chimed again. The prompt refreshed. Enter call sign. Eli Ward opened his eyes. This time, his voice was clearer, low and rough, but unmistakable. Raven 6, the words moved through the intensive care unit like a command from another world. Ava closed her eyes. Director Voss stared at her. The public insult, the accusation, the order to remove her, the laughter in the corridor, all of it hung in the air now, waiting for one answer. Ava stepped toward the terminal. Ava stopped 1 foot from the screen. Her reflection appeared faintly in the dark glass of the terminal. For a second, she saw both versions of herself layered together. The emergency room nurse with tired eyes and a scrub jacket creased from a 14-hour shift, and the woman who once answered a call sign in places where names were never spoken over open air. Raven 6. She had buried that name because it belonged to the night Eli Ward survived, and Petty Officer Lucas Vale did not wake up before extraction. It belonged to a mission report sealed behind signatures and redactions. It belonged to a choice Ava had replayed so many times that sometimes, in the quiet between emergency room calls, she could still feel Lucas' glove slipping from her hand when the transport team pulled her toward the living. Eli had told her afterward that she saved the team. Ava had never believed him. Director Voss' voice cut through the memory. Enter it. Ava turned. No. His eyebrows lifted. No, no, she said. Not on an open unit screen. Voss stared as if he could not understand a world where she still had the nerve to set boundaries. You have been accused of interfering with care, he said. A restricted system has now prompted for the same words this patient said to you. You will enter the call sign and prove what this is. Ava's voice remained steady. That file might contain names and operational details that do not belong in a room full of unauthorized witnesses. Voss gestured toward the nurses, the officers, and the surgeon. Now she cares about protocol. Captain Klein stepped in. She is right. Voss turned sharply. Do not start. Klein did not flinch. If this is compartmented, it needs a secure access point. And if she refuses because she knows it will expose her. Ava looked at him, and something in her calm finally showed its edge. Director Voss, you can punish me after the patient is safe. I can punish you now. The sentence was cruel enough to bring silence. Dr. Mercer looked down. The military police officer at the door shifted uncomfortably. Eli Ward tried to lift his head. Ava immediately turned back to him. No, she said softly. Do not move. His eyes were clearer now. The medication change had helped. He was still weak, still in danger, but the fog had thinned enough for anger to come through. She is protecting the file, Eli whispered. Not herself. Voss leaned over the bed. Commander Ward, with respect, you are medicated and not in command of this unit. Eli's gaze sharpened. Neither are you. The words were weak. The impact was not. Captain Klein drew in a slow breath. Dr. Mercer looked at the floor as if trying not to react. One of the junior nurses in the doorway stared at Eli Ward with awe, not because he was loud, but because every word cost him effort, and he spent that effort defending Ava. Voss straightened. This has become unacceptable. He turned to the military police. Escort Nurse Reed to the administrative conference room. Captain Klein, you will remain with the patient. Dr. Mercer, You will resume treatment under my authority. Neither officer moved. The taller one said carefully, Sir, is there a written suspension order? Voss blinked. I am giving a direct order against clinical staff during active patient care. The officer said, We need documentation or command confirmation. Voss's face darkened. You are refusing me to. The officer did not answer. That was answer enough. The secure terminal chimed again. The prompt changed. Manual delay exceeded. Command verification inbound. Captain Klein read it aloud, and the room felt the ground shift beneath them. Voss stared at the screen. Inbound from whom? Before anyone could answer, the phone at the intensive care unit desk rang. Not the normal outside line. The secure command line. No one moved at first. Then Captain Klein picked it up. Intensive care unit. Captain Klein speaking. Her posture changed within 2 seconds. Yes, sir. She looked at Ava, then at Voss. Yes, she is here. Ava's face went still again. Klein listened, her eyes narrowing with each word. Understood? No, sir. The file has not been opened on the unit display. Nurse Reed advised secure access only. Voss swallowed. Klein listened longer. Yes, sir. I will put you on speaker for Director Voss. She pressed the speaker button. A man's voice filled the room. Older, controlled, carrying the kind of authority that did not need volume. This is Rear Admiral James Harlan, Naval Medical Command. Identify the ranking administrator present. Director Voss stepped forward too quickly. Director Marcus Voss, sir. Director Voss, the Admiral said. I am told you attempted to remove Nurse Ava Reed from care while Lieutenant Commander Ward was unstable. Voss glanced at the witnesses. Sir, there were concerns about misconduct and unauthorized interference. Was the patient harmed by Nurse Reed's action? No, but was the patient stabilized after her warning was followed? Voss's mouth tightened. Temporarily, yes. Did she advise secure handling of restricted material? Voss did not answer immediately. The Admiral's voice cooled. Director, yeah, Voss, das. Then Admiral Harlan said, Put Nurse Reed on the line. Ava did not move. Captain Klein held the phone toward her. Ava stared at it as if it were not a phone, but a door into a room she had sealed years ago. Eli Ward whispered, Ava. She looked at him. He did not say the call sign this time. He did not need to. His expression carried both apology and plea, not for himself, for the truth. Ava took the phone. This is Nurse Reed. The Admiral's voice changed. The authority remained, but something warmer moved beneath it. Raven 6, this is Harlan, actual. Authenticate only if you choose to. Ava closed her eyes. The whole room heard it. Not confusion, not fantasy, not a medicated patient's mistake. A call sign recognized by command. Director Voss went completely still. Ava breathed in once, slow and controlled. Raven 6 authenticates 3-2. Standing by, no one spoke. No one even shifted. The room had frozen. And Director Marcus Voss, who had insulted her in front of everyone, looked as if the air had turned to glass around him. For 10 seconds after Ava authenticated, the intensive care unit did not sound like an intensive care unit. The alarms were quiet. The hallway whispers stopped. Even the soft mechanical rhythm around Eli Ward seemed to fade behind the weight of what had just happened. Director Voss stood with his mouth slightly open, his hand still half raised as if he had been about to interrupt. But the shape of the room no longer allowed him to. The authority he carried so easily had met something older, deeper and sealed by people far above him. Ava held the phone and looked at the floor. She did not look victorious. That unsettled Dr. Mercer more than anything. If he had been publicly humiliated the way she had, if he had been called dramatic, unqualified, attention-seeking, if someone had threatened to remove him in front of nurses, police, and a patient, he would have wanted the room to know he had been right. Ava looked like she wished the proof had never come. Admiral Harlan spoke through the speaker. Captain Klein, secure the unit doors. Essential staff only. Director Voss, you will not access restricted files without command authorization. Dr. Mercer, continue patient care under clinical guidance from Nurse Reed and Captain Klein until the restricted medication record is clarified. Voss found his voice. Sir, with respect, Nurse Reed is not credentialed as an intensive care lead. She is credentialed under emergency command exception for this patient. Voss blinked. I was not aware such an exception existed. You were not required to be aware. The words were not loud. They still landed like a door closing. Captain Klein nodded to the military police. Clear the corridor. The officers moved gently but firmly, guiding the gathered staff back from the doors. The junior nurses disappeared into motion, whispering less now, working more. The unit sealed itself around the patient. Ava handed the phone back to Klein. Admiral, Commander Ward needs the field medication records. You will have it in the secure room, Harlan said. Captain Klein used Terminal 3. Director Voss may observe, but not control access. Voss SS face flushed. Ava moved back to Eli's bedside. Commander Ward, stay with us. You are safe. His eyes opened. You always say that when things are bad. Ava's mouth trembled, almost into a smile. Almost. Because people listen better when they think there is a chance. His fingers moved toward hers again. This time she let him hold on. Dr. Mercer watched them, ashamed in a way that had nowhere to go. Ava, he said quietly, I should have listened faster. She looked at him. No, listened in time. No, he said. I listened after I looked at your badge and decided how much you were allowed to know. The honesty made Captain Klein glance up from the terminal. Ava did not answer immediately. Then she said, do better on the next patient. Mercer nodded. That was the kind of forgiveness she offered. Not soft, not sentimental. A task. Klein opened the secure file in the side office where the unit display could not expose it. Ava stood beside her. Voss stood several feet back, furious at being kept from the keyboard. Dr. Mercer joined them after confirming Eli's vitals had settled. The file appeared with black bars across most of the header. Operation name redacted. Location redacted. Team roster redacted. Medical exception attached. Klein scrolled to the medication entry. There, Ava said, a field stabilizer had been administered before Eli reached base hospital care. It was legal, necessary, and dangerous if combined too quickly with the standard intensive care dose. The transfer note had been delayed behind classification. Ava had recognized the reaction because she had seen it before under combat evacuation conditions. Dr. Mercer closed his eyes. The second dose could have overwhelmed him. Ava did not say yes. She did not need to. Director Voss stared at the file. How did you know without seeing this? Ava looked at the redacted screen. Because I lost someone the first time. Silence entered the office. Not the frozen silence of shock. A human silence. Voss had nothing ready for it. Insult required a target who stays simple. A careless nurse, a dramatic young woman, a subordinate out of place. But grief, complicated people. Duty, complicated people. Captain Klein's voice softened. Lucas Vale. Ava turned sharply. Klein lifted one hand. I only saw the name in an old casualty review when I was still deployed. No details. Just a medical note. Raven 6 contested the timeline. Ava's face tightened. Voss leaned forward. Contested what timeline? Elve looked at him then, and for the first time, the room saw pain cross her face unguarded. The official report said the delay was unavoidable, she said. I said. There had been a command hesitation. A 6-minute pause while people argued over jurisdiction. 6 minutes mattered. Dr. Mercer's voice was low. And Lucas Vale died. Ave swallowed. He was alive when I reached him. He was alive when I loaded him. He was alive when I told him to hold on. EI's monitor sounded softly from the main room. Ava looked through the glass toward him. Eli was beside him, she said. So were 2 others. I chose the sequence. I chose who moved first. Everyone told me I made the only possible decision. Her voice dropped. I never believed them. Captain Klein's eyes shone, but she did not interrupt. Director Voss looked uncomfortable. Not repentant. Not yet. But the ground beneath his accusation had vanished. Ava looked back at the screen. After that, my call sign was sealed into commendations I refused to attend and reports I could not read without hearing his voice. So I left the uniform side. I came here. I became useful where no one asked what I used to be. Dr. Mercer whispered, Why did you never tell us? Ava's answer was immediate. Because the dead deserve privacy more than I deserve respect. The words held the room. Then the secure phone rang again. Captain Klein answered. Her eyes moved to Voss. Yes, Admiral. She listened. Then she said, Understood. She put the call on speaker. Admiral Harlan's voice returned. Director Voss, Command Review, has located a prior administrative notation attached to Nurse Reed's civilian file. It appears someone flagged her as emotionally unsuitable for high-acuity military patients after her transfer to this hospital. Avive went still. Voss's face changed. Only a flicker, but Klein saw it. So did Mercer. The Admiral continued. That notation was unsigned in the accessible system. We have now recovered the archived origin. Voss said nothing. Admiral Harlan's voice hardened. It came from your office. Director Voss did not deny it quickly enough. That was what condemned him before any formal investigation could begin. Ava turned toward him slowly, her face empty with shock. You? Voss adjusted his cuffs. Administrative notes are part of hospital risk management. Captain Klein stared at him. You marked her emotionally unsuitable. I mark concerns based on incomplete service transition documentation, Voss said. This hospital cannot allow classified ghosts to wander into sensitive care spaces without oversight. Dr. Mercer looked disgusted. You limited her assignments. Voss lifted his chin. I protected the institution. Ava's voice was quiet. You knew. Voss did not answer. She stepped closer. You knew the call sign before today? His jaw tightened. That was the second silence that condemned him. Eli Ward's voice came from the main room, rough but clear enough to travel through the open office door. He knew the name. Everyone turned. Eli had pushed himself just high enough against the pillow to see them. A nurse moved to help him settle, but his eyes stayed on Voss. Ava rushed back to the bedside. Eli, you need to rest. He looked at her. No more hiding. Voss stepped into the doorway. Commander Ward, you are in no condition to make accusations. Eli's mouth curved in the faintest expression of contempt. I have made reports in worse condition than this. Captain Klein moved beside the bed. Commander, speak only if you are able. Eli nodded once. His gaze found Avier. For a moment, the years between them seemed to fold inward. He was not seeing the emergency room nurse anymore. He was seeing Raven sick, crouched in smoke and noise, refusing to leave until every living man had been counted. Ava saw it in his face and hated that he remembered her that way. He spoke slowly. After Lucas died, Raven 6 filed a correction. Said command delay cost time. Said medical sequence was used to cover a leadership failure. He breathed carefully, gathering strength. Some people wanted that berry. Voss's voice sharpened. You are speculating. Eli ignored him. Years later, she comes to this base as a civilian nurse, quiet. No requests, no benefits, no speeches. Then her file gets flagged. High acuity restrictions. No special operations recovery assignment. No command medical review. AVA looked at Voss. He looked away. Admiral Harlan, still on speaker in the office, said, Director Voss, were you attached to the Administrative Review Board that received the Lucas Vale correction? Voss said, I was a liaison, not a decision maker. Were you aware Nurse Reed's correction challenged the delay timeline? I was aware of many disputed documents. Were you aware her later civilian file was flagged in language echoing that dispute? Voss did not answer. Captain Klein's face had gone cold. You punished her for telling the truth. Voss snapped. I protected this hospital from controversy. No, Klein said. You protected yourself from a report. Ava stood very still. She had imagined many reasons for the quiet ceiling placed over her career. Budget, policy, lack of degree specialization, civilian transition issues, bad luck. She had told herself it did not matter because she could still work in the emergency room, still help, still save strangers without explaining the dead. But now she saw every closed door differently. Every time she had requested ED's trauma training and been told later. Every time a special operations patient had been routed away from her bay. Every time a supervisor said, you are excellent where you are, AVA, but let us not push the wrong people. Not fate, not policy. A hand, this hand. Director Voss looked at her, and something like fear finally entered his eyes. But fear did not make him humble. It made him crueler. You think a call sign turns you into a hero, he said. You think secret files erase instability. You left military service. You hid your past. You formed an undisclosed bond with a patient. Everything I saw today proves you are a risk. AVA absorbed the words. The room waited for her to break. She did not. Instead, she looked at Eli's monitor, adjusted his blanket with careful hands, and checked the line near his wrist. The motion was so gentle, so ordinary, that Voss's accusation shrank beside it. Director, she said without turning, you insulted me while my patient was declining. You tried to remove me while a restricted medication error was unresolved. You opened a classified prompt on a unit display after I warned you not to. You flagged my file because I wrote that a delay hurt a man who trusted us. She turned then. Her voice stayed soft. I do not need a call sign to answer that. Dr. Mercer looked at her as if seeing her fully for the first time. Captain Klein stood straighter. Eli Ward closed his eyes, not from weakness only, but from relief. Admiral Harlan spoke through the speaker. Director Voss, you are relieved from authority over this patient pending review. Captain Klein assumes unit command for clinical coordination. Dr. Mercer remains attending physician. Nurse Reed remains attached to Commander Ward's care under command exception. Voss's face drained. Sir, he said, that is an extreme response based on emotional testimony. No, Admiral Harlan said. It is based on recovered records, patient outcome, live witness accounts, and your own conduct on the unit. The military police officers stepped closer, not touching Voss, but making the boundary clear. Voss looked around the room. No one rescued him. Not the surgeon, not the charge nurse, not the officers, not the junior staff watching through the glass. The director, who had commanded silence, found himself standing in it. Then Admiral Harlan said the words that finished the reversal. For the record, Nurse Ava Reid, call sign Raven 6, received the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for non-combat heroism, underclassified special operations medical attachment. She refused public ceremony. Her correction to the Lucasville timeline was later substantiated. Eva V's eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. Eli whispered, "Told you." Ava looked at him, a broken little smile appearing at last. "You were sedated. You do not get to say that." He almost smiled back. Captain Klein wiped at one eye quickly and pretended not to. Dr. Mercer bowed his head. Outside the glass, the hallway had filled again, but this time no one whispered insults. No one laughed. No one looked at Ava as if she had wandered above her station. They looked at her as if the room had been standing on a hidden foundation all along, and only now discovered whose hands had held it up. Voss turned toward the door, stiff with humiliation. Before he left, Ava spoke. "Director Voss," he stopped. Everyone watched. Ava could have destroyed him with one sentence. She could have made the moment personal. She could have returned every insult in front of every witness. Instead, she said, "The next time a nurse says a patient is changing, look at the patient first." Voss could not answer. He walked out between the officers, and for the second time that day, the room froze. Not from shock now, from respect. By evening, the story had traveled farther than anyone could control. Not the classified parts. Those remained sealed behind command systems and careful language. But hospitals had their own pulse, and this one beat through corridors, elevators, supply rooms, break rooms, and quiet corners, where nurses leaned against walls for 30 seconds before returning to another crisis. They heard that Director Voss had insulted Ava Ritt in the intensive care unit. They heard that the patient had whispered a call sign. They heard that command itself had answered. Some versions made Ava taller, louder, sharper. Some claimed she had shouted down the director. Others said she had opened a secret file with one touch and filled the screen with medals. None of that was true. The truth was quieter. Ava spent the next 6 hours at Eli Ward's bedside, reviewing medication timing with Dr. Mercer, coordinating with Captain Klein, and speaking to Naval Medical Command only when necessary. She did not mention the director unless someone forced her to. She did not ask who had heard. She did not ask what people were saying. At midnight, the intensive care unit lights dimmed. Eli was stable, not healed, not ready to laugh about anything, but stable, awake enough to understand he was safe, and stubborn enough to keep opening his eyes whenever Ava moved too far from the bed. "You are hovering," he murmured. Ava checked the monitor. "You are complaining. That is an improvement." His voice was rough. "You still blame yourself." She stopped writing on the chart. For a moment, only the soft sounds of the unit filled the space between them. "Ely," she said. "Not tonight." "Tonight," he said. "Because today you almost let them drag you out rather than say who you were." She looked at him. He was pale, exhausted, but his eyes were steady. Ava sat slowly in the chair beside the bed. She looked younger when she sat, less like a myth the hospital had built around her in one afternoon, more like a tired woman who had spent too many years holding her breath. "I made a choice," she said. "Back then, you made 20 choices in 5 minutes," Eli said. "Every one of them kept someone alive, not Lucas." His face tightened with grief, but he did not look away. "Lucas knew you came back for him." Ava's eyes shone. "He asked me if we were going home." Eli swallowed. "We did. Not all of us." "No," he whispered. "Not all." The words did not heal anything, but they told the truth without turning away. Ava looked down at her hands. "I thought if I stopped answering to Raven 6, I could stop hearing that moment." Elias' voice softened. "Did it work?" She gave a small, sad breath that was almost a laugh. "No." He nodded as if he had known. Outside the room, Dr. Mercer approached, then paused when he saw them speaking. Ava noticed and waved him in. He entered with a folded paper. I wanted you both to know. The medication record is now corrected across the system. Command also opened a review of restricted transfer delays. It should not happen again. Ava nodded. Good. Mercer hesitated, and I submitted a statement about what happened, about how I ignored your warning at first. You do not have to confess to me, Ava said. I am not confessing, he replied. I am documenting. There is a difference that made Captain Klein smile from the doorway. He is learning. Mercer accepted that with a tired nod. Klein stepped in, arms folded. Director Voss has been placed on administrative leave pending command and hospital review. Ava looked toward the glass doors. She imagined him in his office, stripped of the audience he once used as a weapon. She expected satisfaction to come. It did not. Only a heavy sadness. People like Voss did damage because the system allowed them to confuse control with leadership. Removing him mattered, but the deeper work would be slower, listening faster, questioning arrogance, protecting staff who spoke when something was wrong, teaching young nurses that calm was not weakness and a badge did not contain the whole truth of a person. Klein seemed to read her thoughts. He will answer for what he did. I hope the hospital does too. The next morning, Command requested a short staff gathering in the main auditorium. Ava refused twice before Captain Klein told her attendance was not optional. She stood in the back in clean scrubs, hair tied low, trying to disappear behind taller staff. It did not work. The auditorium was filled with nurses, doctors, coursemen, administrators, transport staff, and military personnel. No music played. No ceremony banner hung. This was not a celebration. It was a correction. Admiral Harlan appeared on the screen from Naval Medical Command. Captain Klein stood at the podium. She spoke first. Yesterday in this hospital, a nurse identified danger before rank recognized it. That nurse was questioned publicly, insulted publicly, and nearly removed from a patient whose life depended on her knowledge. We cannot undo what happened in that room. We can decide what it teaches us. Ava stared at the floor. Klein continued. Clinical warning is not disrespect. Experience is not always visible on a badge. Humility is not optional in medicine. Neither is courage. Then Admiral Harlan spoke. He did not reveal classified details. He did not turn Ava into a legend. He simply confirmed that Nurse Ava Rye's prior service record had been improperly restricted in her civilian career pathway, and that her full credentials would be reviewed, restored, and honored. A murmur moved through the auditorium. Then Klein said, Nurse Reed, please come forward. Ava froze. Eli Ward, sitting in a wheelchair near the side under medical supervision, lifted one eyebrow at her. She mouthed, Traitor. He mouthed back, Go. The room waited. Ava walked to the front. Every step felt longer than the last. She could face emergencies with steady hands, but respect frightened her. Public honor felt too close to public grief. It asked her to stand where Lucas could not, to accept praise for surviving decisions that still hurt. Captain Klein handed her a small sealed envelope. This is not metal, Klein said softly. Just for her. You already earned those. This is your corrected credential packet and assignment authority. You are cleared for advanced trauma instruction, special operations recovery consultation, and intensive care emergency response. Ava looked down at the envelope. For years, doors had closed quietly. This one opened in front of everyone. The room began to applaud. Ava closed her eyes, not because applause healed everything. It did not. But somewhere beneath it, she heard another sound. Not alarms, not shouting, not Voss laughing in the corridor. 3 taps. Pause. 2. A signal from the living. She opened her eyes and looked toward Eli. He was tapping the armrest of his wheelchair. 3. Pause. 2. Ava pressed her fingers once against the envelope and tapped back against her leg. 3. Pause. 2. Captain Klein saw it. So did Dr. Mercer. Neither spoke. Some codes were not meant to be explained to the whole room. Some names could return without becoming spectacle. Some wounds could remain private and still stop controlling the future. A week later, Ava walked back into the emergency corridor near the intensive care unit, the same stretch of floor where Director Voss had humiliated her. Nothing dramatic happened. No alarm screamed. No command call came through. A young nurse stood by the wall holding a chart, eyes wet, trying not to cry after being corrected harshly by a physician. Ava stopped beside her. The young nurse straightened quickly. "I am fine." Ava looked through the intensive care unit doors, then back at her. "No," she said gently. "You are learning. That is different." The nurse gave a shaky laugh. Ava took the chart, reviewed it, and handed it back. "You noticed the right thing. Say it again, clearly." "I will stand with you." The young nurse stared at her. "You would do that?" Ava smiled faintly. "That is the job." Across the hall, Dr. Mercer saw them and nodded once. Captain Klein watched from the nurse's station, proud but pretending to be busy. And in the recovery wing upstairs, Eli Ward told anyone who would listen that Raven 6 was the most terrifying person in the hospital, because she could make an admiral wait while she finished checking a patient's blood pressure. Ava denied this. Everyone believed Eli. Months later, people still spoke about the day her call sign froze the room. But the staff who had been there remembered something more important. The call sign had not made Ava brave. The medal had not made her right. The secret file had not created her worth. Those things only revealed what arrogance had failed to see. She had been worthy when she was insulted. She had been right when no one listened. She had been strong before the room knew her name. So when a quiet nurse warns the room, listen before pride answers. Behind every calm voice might be a history no badge can carry, a grief no file can explain, and a courage that never asks for applause. If this story moved you, comment your country below and subscribe to Base Hospital Reckoning for more stories where truth arrives late, but never arrives powerless.